The violin sang like it knew her heart was about to break. Evelyn Marin's bow moved with aching precision, each note a slow unraveling of her soul. Her final performance at the Verona Hall was supposed to be a celebration. Every seat in the grand chamber was filled. Her classmates, professors, critics, patrons, they were all here, leaning forward in awe, watching the girl who was supposed to be next. The lights above cast a soft gold shimmer on her curls, her black gown sleek against the stage. She had worn the necklace her mentor gave her the day she was accepted into the conservatory, a delicate gold key. For doors you haven't even dreamed of unlocking yet, he had told her. And now he was dead. She didn't know that yet, not really. She was too focused on the music to feel the edge of the storm curling around her life. The final bars of Prelude in E minor hovered in the air, breathless. The silence that followed felt sacred. Then, the crowd exploded into applause. Evelyn smiled, a small, worn thing. She bowed, her head dipping low. And then. Evelyn Marin. The voice cracked across the stage like a whip. Her head jerked up. Two men in uniform stood under the spotlight. For a split second, she thought it was a mistake. That they'd say, "We're sorry, wrong person," and walk off. "You are under arrest for the manslaughter of Professor Gregor Hess." Gasps. Murmurs. A camera flash. Someone dropped their program. The conductor stood frozen. Evelyn's violin slipped from her hand, crashing against the stage with a hollow thunk. The applause died. Silence swept through the room like smoke. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her throat dry. Her fingers were still curled from playing. The taller officer stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You need to come with us, Miss Marin." "No, wait, he was fine, he was angry," but, she stumbled backward, her heels catching on the edge of the rug beneath her. Cameras started flashing again. Someone shouted, "Get her face." They cuffed her. Her skin prickled with cold as her arms were pulled behind her. The metal cut into her wrists. She looked out into the crowd, and for the first time, she felt it, not fear. Not shame. Abandonment. The police car smelled of cigarettes and plastic. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the glass window. She didn't recognize herself. She looked empty. Not like the girl who had just performed for 500 people. Not like the girl who had made headlines as the youngest prodigy to debut with the National Symphony. Just a girl in cuffs, with tear-streaked cheeks and a violin case on the seat beside her. They didn't let her take her necklace. "Do you want to talk about it?" the officer asked as she sat in the cold metal chair in interrogation. He was trying to be kind, but she didn't respond. The clock ticked overhead. "The building security footage shows you entering his office around 9:40 p.m. last night." Silence. "He was found at the bottom of the stairwell 10 minutes later." Her fingers dug into the table. And someone heard shouting. Of course they did. Because there was shouting. Gregor had screamed at her, called her selfish, reckless, a disappointment. She had screamed back. She had told him she was leaving the conservatory after the tour. She wanted a real life. Not just music. Not just him. And then he was gone. Not because of her. Not the way they said. The news spread like fire. The headlines were merciless. Prodigy or psychopath? Tragedy in the music world, deadly fall or murder? Marin versus Hess, a beautiful talent with a dark secret. They aired photos of her at 16, smiling with Gregor on stage. They dug through old performance tapes, finding any moment her expression twisted, any time she missed a note. The prosecutor built her image, brilliant, yes, but unstable. Demanding. Dramatic. Someone who couldn't handle pressure. Someone who finally snapped. They paraded old rumors, how she fainted after a show. How she screamed at a fellow student during a rehearsal. How she threw a music stand once, years ago, in frustration. This is not about murder, the prosecutor told the press. This is about control, and what happens when a gifted young woman is told no. Her court-appointed lawyer tried. He really did. But he didn't know her. Not like Gregor did. Not like. Don't think of him. She told herself that every night in her cell. But Theo's name came anyway. They had fallen in love during her second year at the conservatory. He was in law school at the time. Older. Steady. Patient when she was a hurricane. She remembered how he'd sit in the back of the hall during rehearsals, how he kissed her fingers after she played, how he always told her she was more than just her talent. And then he left. A quiet departure. A note on her piano. I love you. But I can't be with someone who destroys themselves to be loved. She had never forgiven him. She had never stopped loving him. She stopped counting the days. The cell blurred into the courtroom. The courtroom blurred into long, silent car rides with a guard who didn't make eye contact. Everything smelled of cold concrete and burnt coffee. Evelyn didn't speak unless spoken to. Until the fourth day of the trial. The prosecution had just introduced a new witness, an anonymous student who claimed to have seen Evelyn shove Gregor. Liar, she thought. A jealous little liar. She sat, stiff and pale, trying to breathe. Her hands were hidden in her lap, squeezing the fabric of her dress. Then, in the corner of her eye, she saw a figure enter the courtroom gallery. Her breath caught. He was taller than she remembered. The suit didn't quite fit, creased, slightly frayed at the cuffs. But his face. The storm-gray eyes. The scar near his lip from a college bar fight. The way he tilted his head like he was always listening, even in silence. Theo. He didn't look at her. He just sat. But she knew. He was here for her. And suddenly, her chest didn't feel so hollow. That night, her lawyer told her, "You're getting new counsel." She blinked. Pro bono. Private. Someone reached out. He handed her a card. Theodore Albridge, ESQ. Defense Strategy and Innocence Project. Her fingers trembled as she read it. He said he knew you. That you'd trust him. She didn't sleep at all that night. Not from fear. From something worse, hope. He came to see her the next morning. Not in a suit, but in a soft wool sweater and the jeans she used to borrow when she spent weekends at his place. He brought real coffee. She didn't drink it. He didn't speak at first. Just sat across from her, his hands folded. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "You shouldn't be in prison," he replied. His voice still had that edge, like gravel softened by wind. She stared at the table. "Why are you helping me?" He hesitated. Then said something that shattered her like glass. "Because the truth deserves to breathe. And because, I couldn't sit back and watch you fall." She swallowed hard. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out pages. Files. Photos. "There's something wrong with the timeline." And the security footage was edited. Sloppily. The angle changes mid-frame. She looked up. "You believe me. I never stopped." Her throat closed. "But you left." "I ran," he admitted. "You were breaking, and I didn't know how to help. But I'm here now." Evelyn leaned forward, and for the first time in weeks, her voice held steel. "Then let's win." He hadn't stepped foot in a courtroom in almost 2 years. Not since the day he walked out on a client halfway through trial. It had been a scandal then, the prodigy lawyer who cracked. He never told the press the truth, that he didn't crack. He just stopped caring. The cases felt like hollow victories. The people weren't innocent. The justice felt bought, every single time. But this was different. Evelyn Marin wasn't some high-profile client. She wasn't another name on a brief. She was the reason he ever believed in anything good. And now the world wanted to crush her. He couldn't let that happen. The first time he saw her again, truly saw her, wasn't in the courtroom. It was at the detention center. She looked thin. Her hair pulled back too tightly. Skin pale from fluorescent lighting and stress. But her eyes, God, her eyes still looked like stormlight trapped in glass. He had rehearsed what to say. "I'm sorry. You don't have to forgive me. I'll fight for you, even if you hate me." But she spoke first. "Why are you helping me?" Simple. Flat. And he knew then that nothing he said would be enough. So he gave her the only thing he had left. The truth. Because the truth deserves to breathe. And because, I couldn't sit back and watch you fall. She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Didn't soften. Just leaned in and said, "Then let's win." And just like that, they were back in a rhythm he hadn't known he missed until that moment. The case was a mess. It wasn't just about the evidence, it was how the evidence was being handled. Altered security footage. Inconsistencies in the timestamps. And the worst of it? Someone was trying very hard to bury the records from the night Professor Hess died. The coroner's report had been redacted. The witness statements filed late. Theo traced every report, every name. One by one. And there it was. A name that kept repeating. Stephen Lorne. An administrative assistant in the conservatory's Internal Affairs Division. The same person who filed the incident report. The same person who handled the security tape. And, conveniently, the same person who disappeared 2 days after Evelyn's arrest. Theo's jaw clenched. It wasn't a coincidence. He turned to his paralegal, Darren. "Find him. That guy's gone. Moved across the country. Changed jobs. No forwarding address. Dig deeper." They were close. Theo could feel it. This wasn't just a bad fall. It was a setup. In court, Theo was steel. He spoke slowly. Carefully. Used short sentences. Made the jury lean in. He cross-examined the anonymous student witness who claimed Evelyn shoved Hess. "You said you saw her near the stairwell." "Yes." "From the practice room window?" "Yes." He turned the courtroom monitor on. "This is the layout of the second floor. Is that accurate?" The student nodded. "And here is the view from the practice room window." Theo clicked to a photo. "Do you see the stairwell?" A pause. "No." "So, unless you've got X-ray vision, how exactly did you see her shove anyone?" The student floundered. Stammered. The judge banged her gavel for order. The crowd started murmuring. Score one for the truth. Outside the courtroom, the press swarmed. Theo hated them almost as much as they loved him. "Is it true you and Miss Marin used to date? Are you defending her because of guilt? Do you believe she's innocent, or are you just proving a point?" He never answered. He only watched Evelyn. How she stared straight ahead. How she flinched when people whispered her name. How her fingers still moved, even at rest, like she was practicing scales in her mind. He remembered those fingers on his jaw. His chest. How she used to hum when she worked, how her music always sounded like longing wrapped in lace. And then he remembered leaving her. The night of her first breakdown. The yelling. The crying. How she threw a book across the room and whispered, "You only love the part of me that shines." He hadn't known what to say. So he left. Now, he was trying to earn the right to stay. "You want to take the stand?" He stared at her across the prep table in the holding room. Evelyn looked calm. Too calm. Yes. We haven't finished shredding the state's case. There's risk. And silence makes me look guilty. He ran a hand through his hair. They'll twist your words. Then let them. I'm tired of being everyone's story but my own. She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Do you believe me, Theo? Yes. Do you believe I'm worth saving? He froze. Because it wasn't a question about the trial. And she knew it. He stepped closer. The air between them went tight. You were always worth saving. I just didn't know how. For a second, he thought she might touch his hand. She didn't. But she let him see the soft behind her armor. And that was more than enough. When she took the stand, the courtroom held its breath. Evelyn Marin sat tall, elegant, voice steady as stone. Professor Hess was my mentor. He helped me. He also controlled me. Gasps. Theo had warned her not to go there. But she went anyway. He told me where to live, what to play, who to speak to. And when I told him I was leaving the conservatory after the tour, he screamed. Told me I was nothing without him. She paused. Her voice caught, but only briefly. We fought. I walked away. I didn't push him. I didn't hurt him. And I still don't know how he fell. Why didn't you tell this to the police? Theo asked, gently. Her voice lowered. Because I thought maybe I deserved to fall too. Someone in the gallery began crying. Theo didn't look at the jury yet. He was too busy watching her. And falling all over again. That night, they didn't speak in the prep room. They just sat. Eventually, he said quietly, you know the case is turning. So why don't I feel safe yet? He didn't answer. So she stood. Walked to the window. You want to know what hurts the most? She whispered. He nodded, even though she wasn't looking at him. Not the trial. Not the betrayal. Not even losing my career. He waited. It's realizing the last time someone looked at me and saw a person, was you. 3 years ago. And you walked away. His heart twisted. I didn't know how to hold you without breaking myself. She finally turned around. Then maybe we both needed to break. They stood there in silence. And for the first time since the arrest, she smiled. On day 9 of the trial, everything changed. Darren burst into Theo's office. We found him. Lorne. Yes. And you'll want to see this. He handed Theo a phone. A video played. It was shaky, recorded in a bar. Lorne, drunk, laughing. That chick. Marin. She didn't do it. Hess had dirt on half the board. He was gonna go public. Someone shut him up. I just did the paperwork. Theo stared, frozen. We've got motive. We've got confession. I can get a subpoena and drag him into court. Theo smiled for the first time in weeks. Let's burn it down. The next morning, Theo submitted a motion to reopen discovery. The prosecutor objected. The judge allowed it. When Lorne walked into the courtroom, looking hungover and nervous, the jury leaned in. He cracked in 5 minutes. I didn't kill him. But I knew. They told me to clean it up. Said if Marin took the fall, it'd go away. Who's they? Board members. Donors. One of them was Eugene Kraft. The courtroom erupted. Kraft was a trustee. One of Hess's biggest rivals. Evelyn had accused him of trying to cancel her tour 2 months earlier. Suddenly, it all made sense. Theo met Evelyn's eyes across the room. And for the first time since this began, she looked free. The judge dismissed the charges 2 days later. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. But when the cuffs came off for the last time, Theo was there. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. They walked outside together. No press. No fanfare. Just late afternoon sun and the taste of something almost like peace. "You're free," he said. "For now," she replied. "But I'm not going back to who I was." He nodded. "Good. And you? What about me? You still running?" He stepped closer. "Not anymore." And then, finally, after 3 years, a courtroom, and a mountain of lies, they kissed. Softly. Not like before. Not with desperation. But with the quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, loyalty could be louder than fear. Nate Marin didn't do courtrooms. He didn't do family reunions. Or long conversations. Or anything that required him to sit still and feel something for longer than 5 seconds. He was a man of silence. Of closed doors. Of things left unsaid. But on the 9th day of Evelyn's trial, he stood in the back of that courtroom like a shadow in a suit. Hands in his pockets, jaw clenched, pulse hammering in his throat. She didn't know he was there. He hadn't spoken to her in 4 years. Not since their last fight. Not since he said the one thing a brother should never say. "Maybe you like being the victim." And then he left. No explanation. No phone calls. No letters. Just, vanished. Evelyn had been 20. Still raw, still fragile. He knew she looked up to him, God help them both, she trusted him, and he left anyway. Because he couldn't bear to tell her the truth. Nate ran a quiet carpentry shop in a coastal town 2 hours from the city. It paid the bills. Kept his hands busy. People liked him there. They didn't ask too many questions. Every so often, someone would recognize the last name. "You related to that violinist girl?" He'd nod. Once. And then he'd go home and drink something stronger than guilt. He had watched the first few minutes of the trial on a grainy live stream. Turned it off before the opening statements ended. It was too much, her voice, her face, the way she still sat like she was trying to be smaller than her music. But when Theo Albridge showed up, that was different. Nate knew Theo. Not well. But well enough to know he didn't break easily. So if he was back, something was coming. Something bigger than bad press or old pain. Maybe the truth. And maybe, it was time to face it. He arrived in court unannounced. Sat in the very back. Didn't speak to anyone. Didn't want to. When he saw Evelyn on the stand, his throat closed. She looked like their mother. Strong. Stubborn. Still beautiful, even under fluorescent lights. She told the truth. Or at least the version of it she believed. But Nate knew things she didn't. And if he didn't say them soon, she might never get a full acquittal. He left the courtroom during recess and lit a cigarette behind the courthouse. Old habit. No one saw. No one asked. He texted someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Need to talk. About Hess. About Evelyn. Tonight. When they were kids, Evelyn was always following him. Barefoot in the backyard, carrying her violin case even in the summer. She begged him to teach her chords on the guitar, to race her bikes down the hill, to read his stupid poetry. He was 11 years older. More of a third parent than a sibling. When their mom died, it only got worse. Dad shut down. Nate stepped up. Fed her. Cleaned. Signed her permission slips. Stayed up with her when she cried because the music was too loud in her head. He loved her like a father and a brother and a protector all wrapped into one. Until the night he left. And he never forgave himself for what happened after. Hess wasn't just strict. He was possessive. It had started subtly. More late-night lessons. Texts about practice expectations. He told her what to wear at recitals. Who she could talk to. Nate didn't notice at first. Didn't want to. But then Evelyn stopped coming home on weekends. Then she started crying over critiques that were too cruel to be professional. And one day, she showed up with a split lip and said it was from falling on her case. Nate didn't believe her. He confronted Hess once. Pulled him aside after a performance and told him, "If you ever touch her again." And Hess just smiled. "She needs discipline. You'd know that if you weren't so absent." Nate hit him. Open fist. Once. No one saw. Hess didn't press charges. And then Nate disappeared. Because he was afraid he'd kill the man if he stayed. And part of him thought, if I leave, she'll follow me out. But she didn't. The night Hess died, Nate was in town. No one knew. Not even Evelyn. He had come to confront Hess again. After hearing from someone at the conservatory that the relationship was spiraling. He waited outside the building. Saw Evelyn go in. Saw her come out 20 minutes later, eyes red, face pale, hands shaking. He almost called her name. But then Hess appeared at the window. And a minute later, Nate heard the crash. He ran inside. Found Hess at the bottom of the stairwell, head twisted at a terrible angle. And what did he do? He ran. Again. Because his first thought wasn't Evelyn's in trouble. It was they'll blame her. And his second thought? They'll be right. He didn't know what she had done. Didn't know if she'd pushed him. Didn't ask. And for years, that silence was his penance. Until now. That night, he met Theo at a dive bar on 5th Street. It was quiet, dark, half-empty. Theo didn't drink. Nate ordered whiskey. They sat in a corner booth. "I saw you in court," Theo said. Nate shrugged. "You coming to testify?" A beat of silence. "You don't want me to," Nate replied. "Try me." Nate looked up. "I saw her leave the building. Hess fell after. I went in. I saw him. And I left." Theo's eyes sharpened. "You were there?" "Yes." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't know if she pushed him. And I didn't want to add doubt." Theo leaned back. "So you left her to fight it alone?" Nate didn't flinch. "I left because I thought she needed to stand without me. I thought, maybe that would make her stronger." Theo let out a slow breath. "That's not your call." "No," Nate said. "But it was my fear." "Are you going to tell her?" Theo asked. Nate sipped his drink. "Does she need to know?" "She's rebuilding her life on trust. Don't give her another reason to question it." Nate nodded slowly. "I'll do it." He didn't sleep that night. He sat in his truck outside the detention center until dawn, replaying everything in his head. Evelyn as a baby. Evelyn at 10, playing broken lullabies on a cracked violin. Evelyn at 17, already a storm in the making. He saw the guilt. The ache. The anger. And he saw her falling. And falling. And never calling for him. When they let him visit, she looked at him for a long time before speaking. "You're real," she said quietly. "I'm here. I don't know if I should hug you or scream at you." "Do both." She stood. Walked toward him. Then hit him. Once. Square on the chest. And then wrapped her arms around him and sobbed into his shirt. He held her. Like he should have done 4 years ago. "You were there," she whispered later, her voice hollow. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid I wouldn't like what I found." Her eyes filled again. But not with tears. With fury. "I needed you. I know. And you still left. He nodded. And I forgive you, she said, but I will never forget it. He didn't ask her to. On the final day of the trial, he took the stand. He told the truth. That he saw her leave before Hess fell. That she looked scared, but not violent. That he didn't see any evidence of a fight. No bruises. No blood. No raised voices. Just a man at the bottom of a staircase and a broken girl walking into the night. Do you believe your sister killed Professor Hess? Theo asked him. Nate looked straight at the jury. No, and I never did. Outside the courthouse, he lit another cigarette. Evelyn stood beside him. You still smoke those things? Only when I feel like a fraud. You're not a fraud, she said. Just a coward. No, she replied. Just someone who made mistakes. He flicked ash into the wind. What now? I reclaim my life. And me? She gave him a sad smile. Carmen Voss had always believed in two things. Truth was never clean. Headlines sold better when someone was falling. She wasn't proud of that second one, but it had made her one of the most read culture columnists in the Northeast. And when the Evelyn Marin scandal broke, Carmen's inbox lit up like Christmas. Rising star or manipulative monster? Conservatory sweetheart accused of killing her mentor, what really happened that night? She ran all of it. At first. But the more she looked, the more it didn't make sense. Carmen had made a career out of digging up dirt. And this case? It smelled off. Too polished. Too perfectly tragic. The kind of story publicists fed to tabloids to bury something worse. So she stopped writing. And started listening. She'd met Evelyn Marin once, 2 years ago, at a charity gala for rising artists. Carmen had been reporting for the arts section then, not court drama. Evelyn had worn black velvet, laughed too quietly, and avoided every camera. Carmen remembered thinking, there's a story here. They were the same age. Both hungry. Both overlooked in their own ways. But Evelyn had talent. Carmen had words. They had exchanged only a few sentences that night. Enough for Carmen to learn that Evelyn didn't like interviews, didn't read reviews, and definitely didn't care about public perception. She had admired that. And now? Now the world was watching Evelyn burn. Carmen wasn't sure she wanted to help put out the fire. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to throw more fuel on it either. 3 weeks into the trial, Carmen stopped attending as press and started showing up as an observer. No pad. No pen. No digital recorder tucked in her bag. Just curiosity. And something else she didn't name until later. She noticed the cracks first. The prosecutor's case moved like a symphony at the start, sharp, orchestrated, confident. But then Lorne's video leaked. Theo's cross-examinations turned tides. Nate Marin took the stand. And the narrative began to unravel. Carmen knew what that looked like. She'd built whole careers off watching it happen. Still, something kept tugging at her gut. A thread she couldn't follow. Not from the press bench. Not from second-hand rumors. So she called in a favor. Late one night, she met a former conservatory admin at a diner 3 towns over. The woman was retired now, drinking tea with shaking hands. You didn't hear this from me, she whispered, eyes darting. But Hess had files. Secret files. Recordings. Carmen froze. Recordings of what? Students. Private lessons. Meetings. Conversations. Why? The woman leaned in. Blackmail. Control. Fear. Carmen blinked. Her stomach twisted. And Evelyn? There were tapes of her too. But most of them disappeared. Carmen narrowed her eyes. When? Same night he died. The next day, Carmen found herself staring at a photo of Professor Gregor Hess. She had once written a glowing piece about him. A father figure to the next generation of musicians. Now she wanted to claw that article off the internet. But it was still there. The truth didn't delete itself. She opened a blank file. Typed the title, The Last Encore, the story you haven't heard about Evelyn Marin. And stared at the blinking cursor. Because she wasn't sure how to write it. Yet. She caught Evelyn alone in the courthouse corridor 2 days before the trial ended. You probably hate me, Carmen said, stepping into her path. Evelyn blinked. Should I? I've written about you. Not kindly. Then I definitely don't read your work. Carmen gave a wry smile. I think someone's covering up what happened to Hess. And I think they used you to do it. Evelyn's expression didn't change. Not at first. But her hands curled into fists. Why tell me this now? Because I know what it's like to be a girl with a story no one wants to hear. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward her, cautious. What do you want? The truth. A pause. Then, do you know how to write it without killing me in the process? Carmen exhaled. I'd like to try. They met 3 times after that. The first time, Evelyn didn't say much. The second time, she told Carmen about her first lesson with Hess. How he had praised her technique, then spent the last 10 minutes telling her what kind of dress would make her less intimidating. The third time, she talked about the night of his death. He was angry, she said quietly. Not like normal angry. Unhinged. Said if I left, I'd ruin everything. That I owed him. Carmen didn't write a single word that night. She just listened. Because it wasn't about the headline anymore. It was about a girl who had been reduced to a villain for refusing to be a puppet. On the final day of the trial, Carmen was there when the judge dismissed the case. All charges against Evelyn Marin are hereby dropped. It wasn't applause-worthy. It wasn't redemption. But it was something. Carmen watched Evelyn breathe for the first time in months. And watched Theo reach for her hand. Not a headline, she thought. A heartbeat. The article she published a week later didn't go viral. But it was honest. It detailed the inconsistencies in the trial, the manipulation of the narrative, the power dynamic between Hess and his students. It never painted Evelyn as a saint, but it didn't damn her either. The headline? She wasn't perfect. But she wasn't a killer. A month later, Carmen got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a ticket to a small recital. Evelyn Marin's first public performance since the trial. The program was short. Intimate. Just 4 pieces. Carmen sat in the second row. And when Evelyn took the stage, she didn't look scared. She looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out silvered. After the final note, Evelyn looked up. Met Carmen's eyes. And nodded. Carmen didn't cry. Not in public. But when she walked out into the night, the stars above her seemed softer somehow. And for the first time in years, she believed that maybe, just maybe, words could heal.